The format of this video is going to be a little bit different than most of my videos. I guess you could call this a vlog. I kind of hate that word. About a trip that I recently took. In years gone by, I used to travel quite a bit for work. I used to go to Kronos meetings to develop open graphics standards like OpenGL and Vulkan. I used to go to SIGGRAPH to learn about new graphics technologies and to see how special effects in movies had been done. I used to go to the Game Developers Conference, mostly to meet with game developers and find out what they were doing and what they needed. I used to go to the X Developers Conference. That's X Windows, not that other X nonsense. Mostly to present open source graphics work that I had been doing. I've even been to the Linux Plumbers Conference a handful of times, and I went to LinuxConf Australia once. Ironically, the one time I went to LCA, it was in New Zealand. But it does that. It travels around Oceania a bit. The human malware and some financial woes at my employer pretty much halted all conference travel some years ago. Now, in each of those conferences, I enjoy either the technical content or the social content to varying degrees. Like some it's more this and some it's more that. But there is one conference that for me stands out above all the others. The Free Open Source Software Developers European Meeting, also known as FOSDEM. My experience has been that most people at most conferences are either there looking for a job, looking to hire for some jobs, or they're there to, present the stuff that they have been working on because their corporate overlords told them to. FOSDEM is not like that. FOSDEM takes place the first weekend of February. If you thought it was hard for me to say that, just wait, at ULB. If I can't say February properly, I am not going to try to say the French name of that university. It's going to make everyone mad. This is in Brussels, Belgium, which is a French-speaking city in Belgium. Belgium is multilingual. It's topic for a completely different video. It is predominantly a younger crowd, and the majority of people giving talks are talking about projects that they work on that they think is just some amazing, awesome sauce. They're excited about it, and they want you to be excited about it too. They either want you to contribute to it, or they want you to use it, or they want you to tell them how they can make it better, or they want you to tell them about your project that does the same kind of thing, but is, oh my God, even better. It gives it a completely different kind of energy. I have never encountered someone there who is there because they were sent there. They are there because they wanted to go. It's also free, like completely free. This will be the irony of this will be apparent a little bit later, like free as in beer. There's no registration, there's no name badges, nothing. You just show up and go listen to people talk about cool stuff. And the first time I went, this was weird for me because nobody told me anything about it. I just been told like, oh, this is awesome, you should go this year. So I went and I went around like, I asked people, where's the registration desk? And they're like, what? I gotta go listen to a talk. What are you talking about, man? Like, what? So now let this soak in for a minute. It's a 2-day conference over the weekend at a university with over 8,000 attendees and over 1,000 talks. It's a lot. Like, it's a lot. I strongly encourage anyone who has even a passing interest in open source software to go. Attend this conference. Find a way to go to this conference. It's an amazing experience. Now, I haven't been to FOSDEM since February of 2020. Now, that's all I'm going to say about that. This year, I decided to go back. I decided it was time to go back. And I decided that I was going to attend as Ian from Tales of Weird Stuff instead of as Ian from
Corporate Entity.
One of the neat things about Portland in January is there are usually a couple weeks of really nice weather. If you happen to visit Portland in that narrow window, do not be fooled. This is just that brief instant when the weather stops to reload. There is a lovely direct flight from Portland to Amsterdam, and that is basically my preferred way to go anywhere in Europe. I don't usually spend much time looking out the window on this flight. It's about 10 hours long. It arrives in Amsterdam around 8 a.m. I usually take a sleeping pill right after the in-flight meal and sleep most of the flight away. The goal after arriving in Amsterdam is to stay awake until kind of normal sleeping time in the local time zone. Like you get there in the morning, you've slept some, it's been poor sleep, but you've slept some, and you power through that first day. You power through that first day, you go to sleep at 9 o'clock or something, and you get up the next morning, and almost every time, like your internal clock is adjusted, in theory. It has worked many times before. Now, it just so happened that on the day I flew out of PDX was one of those clear January days. The flight departs mostly eastbound from Portland, and the view out the north-facing side of the plane was gorgeous. Many of the mountains in Washington state were out on display. In this first view, you can see Mount St. Helens on the left and Mount Rainier on the right. In this second view, Mount Rainier is on the left and Mount Adams is on the right. These are the two tallest mountains in Washington. Mount Rainier is 14,417 feet and Mount Adams is 12,281 feet. Mount St. Helens used to be the 5th tallest mountain in Washington until it blew off more than half a cubic mile of itself in 1980. The 80s were rough on everyone. Even though I've done this trip many times before and I should know what I'm doing, my sleep situation completely failed on this trip. I arrived Wednesday morning for a conference on Saturday, and in that intervening period, I didn't get more than 4 hours of sleep a night until Saturday night. I have never had jet lag like that going to Europe. Friday night before the conference, I was literally falling asleep at a dinner table with 5 other people in a super noisy restaurant. So because of that, after dinner, I just went back to the hotel and just crashed. But because of that, I missed one of my favorite parts of FOSDEM, which is the welcome party at Delirium Cafe. If you go, apparently the welcome party is not an official event now, but tons of people from the conference still go there on Friday night, and it is a great time. I did manage to start Saturday with a lovely breakfast before heading to the conference. FOSDEM is organized a bit differently than other conferences that I have attended. In a very European Union sort of way, it's kind of a loose confederation of mini conferences. Now, there are a few main tracks and keynote sessions and things like that you would expect, but the majority of the conference, the bulk of the material that gets presented, is organized around a bunch of dev rooms. Over the years, the number of dev rooms has grown quite considerably. Now, dev rooms are, the name surprises some people. They're not rooms where people go to work on things. Dev rooms are topic-focused rooms organized by a small group of individuals. They're essentially mini conferences. And sometimes that group is a single person. Each dev room has its own call for participation. It has its own review board. It is its own organization structure within the larger structure of FOSDEM. This is part of the reason why there is such a just massive variety of topics covered at this conference. Now, most dev rooms are either a half day or a whole day. In the past, I have given talks in the graphics dev room, but the person who used to organize that has been taking a bit of a vacation for the past couple of years. Now on Saturday, I split my time 3 ways. I went to a couple of talks in the morning. The first one was in the testing and continuous delivery dev room. This talk started at 10:30. And at 10:30 a.m., after many people had been out having a good old time in the Brussels beer scene until who knows how late, not that I have ever done that basically every other year that I've gone to the conference, the dev room was packed. And this is a very normal thing at FOSDEM. And it's something that I was curious to see if had changed since the human malware. Now, the talk was interesting, but I didn't feel like it was because of what they were trying to do. I didn't feel like it was as directly applicable to what I do as I had hoped. From there, I went over to a talk in a completely different building on the other side. It's just like being back in college. Like you have one class over here and then like, okay, now I have 10 minutes to get clear across to the other side of the campus and hopefully get a good seat at the talk, 300 feet away or whatever. I went to a talk. It was called, I'm gonna just read it because it's long. Incremental Memory Safety in an Established Software Stack, Lessons Learned from Swift. I enjoyed this talk a lot. I don't want this to sound like a knock on it, but once I got into the talk, it felt a little bit like bait and switch. The talk was really about integrating modules written in the Swift programming language into a large existing C or C++ code base. And a big chunk of that was how you can decorate your existing code to communicate to the Swift compiler about how large a memory buffer is, things about the lifetimes of memory, ownership, and things like that. So it was still a very interesting talk. It was kind of predicated on you're going to start using some Swift, not so much you're going to keep on the trajectory that you're on of using C or C++, and you just want to make that safer. Now, the thing that really got me about this talk, and that I think really solidified for me that the speaker knows what they're talking about and was good, was in the middle. He went on this kind of side tangent about don't rewrite your whole project in some new language. Don't do that. Don't rewrite the world is bad. And he had a couple of slides where he sort of highlighted a number of the pitfalls in really any kind of let's rewrite the world proposal. Now, I have been on large software projects where various parties, both external, mostly external, but also occasionally internal, have tried to pitch, hey, let's rewrite the world. And the case that the speaker made against that was more concise than anything I have ever come up with. And there were a few of the things that he said about how people who aren't, like someone has to keep the existing ship afloat, and the people who are on that and are not on the let's rewrite the world, they feel left out. And like a bunch of other things that I have for sure seen in practice, and it can really screw a project. Now, in addition to that, there were some of the tips about how to decorate existing C and C++ to make it integrate with Swift. Also can just make the C and C++ better. So there was a bit of that. It felt more like a footnote than the core topic. The bummer about it is, so Swift uses LLVM, and so it's closely related with Clang. So all of the ways that he was explaining to do these things are the way that Clang implements them. And GCC can do many or all of the same things, but it does them completely differently because none of this stuff is standardized. So if you're on a project that some developers are using one and some developers are using the other, I don't know how you move forward. Or to put another way, I don't know how I'm going to move forward with my project. But there was still some interesting stuff here. After that, another big chunk of my Saturday was going through what FOSDEM calls stands. Now this is the low budget version of an exhibition hall. And really, I mean, it's free. FOSDEM is a low budget, no frills conference. Like there is no bells and whistles. Like you are there for the technical content and the social interaction. You are not there because there's freebies given out or because there's lavish parties thrown or any other kind of nonsense. You are there focused. Again, I don't want this to sound like a knock. I love this conference. It's the low budget version of an exhibition hall. Projects or vendors can get a table and show off their stuff throughout the conference. This is just one of, I want to say there's about 5 separate areas because no one of the areas is large enough to hold all of the stands. But this was the biggest one and the one that was sort of easiest to record video in. There was so much on display that my brain couldn't even hardly take it all in. This room shows better than any other the chaos and the frenetic energy that is FOSDEM. So in this area, there were several open source games and game engines on display. So both Lunati, which is sort of a Minecraft game engine, Minecraft game style game engine, and Zero AD, which I love that their flyer here, one side is in English and the other side is in French. I love that. I don't know why. They both had booths. It seems like there was at least one other game engine that was on display, but I don't remember. There were also tables for big open source projects like LibreOffice and Mozilla, as well as a handful of various open source operating system distros. The FreeBSD people had an Amiga 1200 running FreeBSD on display. See, there is a retrocomputing tie in here, and there will be more. So this is not something I see every day. I've been to many exhibition halls at many conferences, and it is fairly common where, like, by lunchtime on the first day, you wander through the hall and you talk to the people at the booths, and they're done. Like they have already had it. They've been there 4 hours and they are all ready to flip all the tables and just peace out and go home. But here, everyone, like, to the end of it, like, people got tired for sure, but to the end of it, they still were excited about their project. Like nobody had a script that they were reading from, and they wanted, you know, have you used this? Have you played this? Blah blah blah. I didn't so much this time because I was suffering really badly from jet lag, but because of the work that I do, I would go around to a lot of these booths and talk to them and like, hey, have you tested on my software? How has that worked out for you? And I've had a lot of great conversations with people like that. And when people find out that their software has interactions with someone else's software, and then you start talking about where the two meet, like, oh my God, it's like we're long lost family. Where have you been all my life? Now, the rest of my Saturday was spent in the GCC dev room. I really wanted to see the talk about, and this is serious, the talk about using GCC for development on the Sega Dreamcast. But by the time I got there, 20 minutes before the talk, the room was full and the door was closed. However, I did not despair because I was able to live stream the talk on my phone from right outside the door. Like, there were some hiccups in the stream, but like, I seriously felt like I was living in the future. Like, this thing is happening live, and even if I hadn't gone, I could have watched all the talks live. Your ability to interact with them is kind of gone, but you can still see the things. And there were a couple of the other talks that I went to while I was in the talk, and I messaged people that I knew, back in this time zone, like, oh my gosh, this was such an interesting talk. And they went and they watched the end of it and downloaded the slides and looked through the slides. And they're like, oh wow, yeah, that thing that he talked about 15 minutes ago, that was really interesting. It's like we're living in the future. And every single talk is live streamed like this. It is an amazing amount of work. And over the years, they have gradually built up the technology that they use to be able to do this. And it's amazing. Previous years when I had given talks, they live recorded all of the stuff. And then in the week after the conference, like, okay, chop up all the videos from all the recordings in all the rooms, and they would post them online and have them be available. So yes, you can go find my old talks online somewhere. But now it's just like, forget it. We're just we'll do it live. So I did manage to get into the dev room for the next couple talks. The next two were sort of beginner talks about how to get into GCC development and how to make contributions in a couple specific areas. They were kind of aimed at people who needed to do something to support the work that they were doing. At least one of the guys was from a RISC-V project, and so like RISC-V has an evolving instruction set, and so if you want to do things, if you want to get at those instructions, like you got to add support to the compiler for them. So there were some things about that. I've never contributed to GCC, but part of me would really like to do that someday. I mean, I've used it since the 1900s. And so I just feel like I should. And most of my day job is working on a compiler. I had also really wanted to attend a later talk about optimizing switch statements. That is a surprisingly complicated topic. It's complicated how to do it right on CPUs, and it's even more complicated on GPUs where I do it. So I was very curious to see what the latest and greatest was in CPU land. But by the time that talk came around, I was just getting too tired. So I bailed early and I went back to my hotel, and I got a couple hours of sleep before I went out for dinner so that I would not fall asleep at the dinner table. Sunday morning, I had intended to see a talk about imposing memory security in C, but instead, I actually slept. It was the first time I had gotten more than 4 hours of sleep in a night, and it was the first time that I didn't wake up every 90 minutes. It was fabulous. I got like 6.5 hours of sleep, and I just slept straight through. Now, I did make it to a slightly later talk. There was kind of a big gap in talks that I was interested to, and I saw one that was just, it seemed quirky, so I went to go see a talk about writing a killer README. I thought this was a great talk. And it really underscores the variety of topics available at this conference. Now, the majority of the information that the speaker presented in this talk kind of falls into that category of, it's totally obvious as soon as you know it. It was really, really well presented, and I would go see her speak again. And I plan to apply some of those guidelines. I've got a handful of projects on GitHub that have fairly terrible READMEs, and I do plan to fix some of those up using some of the suggestions that she made. It was a really good talk. There is a little bit of an elephant in the FOSDEM room. Right at the top of the FOSDEM website, beer is mentioned. And there are a number of beer styles that are native, I guess is probably the right word, to Belgium. The various Trappist monastery styles and some of the more wine-like lambic styles especially. And Brussels itself is a top destination for beer geeks. Without a doubt, it is one of the best beer cities in the world. If people would be interested in me doing a talk or doing a video about a beercation in Brussels, let me know in the comments. I have been there enough times, and I've been to a bunch of the places. I have a lot of recommendations that I could make and a lot of tips and tricks that I can recommend. But that's outside the topic of this video. Beer and FOSDEM doesn't end at the welcome party, the one that I missed this year. It for sure starts there. Like it's that welcome party is held at possibly the most well-known beer bar in the entire world. And I know that several publications have rated it the best beer bar in the world. So it starts there, but it for sure does not end there. Beer is literally available to buy at the conference venue. And it's pretty common to see people in talks, you know, tipping one back. Over the years, I have had to warn many newbies, like both people that have traveled with me and people that I have met along the way. I have had to warn them about Belgian beer. Not because it's bad, but because one, it is very good, and this is not 4.2% ABV Coors Light. The Westmalle Triple that they sell at the conference is 9.2%. So like 2.5 bottles of that is a 6-pack of Coors. I've had to warn many people, you have got to slow your roll. I very rarely actually have beer at the conference venue. I don't need anything else that's going to make me sleepy. And the beverage people, there are numerous beverage stands around the conference. Beverage people, bless their little hearts, they try. They try to provide coffee, but the coffee at FOSDEM is an abomination. Like James Hoffman would flip all the tables in rage. He would not be happy. My conference day is basically fueled by Club Mate. And I was introduced to this beverage well over 10 years ago at FOSDEM. And I remember that experience very well. I had been at the conference, I think it was the second time I went to FOSDEM. I had been there and I had seen all these people with this beverage that I'd never even heard of. Like the beers, I could understand that I had never heard of because there's a lot of, you know, regional breweries, and like you go to a new place, you're going to find new things. And like a bunch of the sodas, I knew of those, but there's this weird stuff that I had never heard of. Like, what is this? So I decided to get a bottle because I wanted to find out what all the fuss was about. And damn it, I can be a cool kid. I couldn't say that with a straight face. Not at all. And I remember very clearly, I was on my way to a talk in the large auditorium in the K room. I got the beverage, I was walking, I want to try to get there. Now that auditorium is really big, so it basically never fills up. Opened up the bottle and I took a drink, and it was nasty. I could not believe how gross it was. So one of the things about the dev rooms, and especially some of the larger rooms, is they have these weird, like the rows are very close together and they have these weird fold-out desktops. And if I'd have been thinking, I would have at least gotten a picture of them or taken a video of pulling them out. The thing about it is, you can basically get trapped. If you're in the middle of a row and the people on the sides of you don't get out, like there's no way to get around them. Like, if you're in the middle and you want to get out, everyone has to get completely out of the row. So unless you really want out, it's very easy to just be like, I'll just stay here. It's fine. It's fine. So that happened to me on this first Club Mate day. I think it was about a little bit into the second talk. I was just like, oh God, I'm so thirsty. I have to drink something. And all I have is this horrible, nasty German soft drink. You do what you have to do to survive, right? So I took another drink and I was like, it's kind of weird, but maybe it's not that bad. And a little while later, I took another drink. I was like, maybe it's okay. I don't know. It's so weird. I don't know what to. By the time the bottle was gone and the talk was over, I had to get out of the room because I needed to go use the restroom after drinking a liter of soft drink. And also, I needed to get another bottle. Now, a few months ago, the YouTube channel, My Name is Endong, did a couple of videos about Club Mate and sort of the history, and he did a video about how you can make your own. He's located in Berlin. And he explained that many people experience this exact same story arc. Like the first drink, ugh, but then by the end of the bottle, you're like, crap, I gotta go get some more. So for years, I thought I was a freak. You see, social media, it does bring us together. Now, the rest of Sunday was spent in the Retrocomputing dev room. These are my people. Now, at a conference where there's talks about using Rust in the Linux kernel and about the new AI vector data type that has been added to MySQL, I did not expect there to be a line for a talk about connecting vintage mice, weird, quirky vintage mice, to a modern computer. And yet it totally happened. Now, there were a couple of weird old mice that were mentioned in that talk that I have. So I think now I am obligated to get these mice. This one is from a DEC station. It's an old DEC Unix computer that does not have a ball and is not optical. And this also neither has a ball nor is optical. So he specifically talked about this mouse and about how to get it working on a modern computer over USB. So now I feel like I'm obligated to do something with these mice now. I did leave that dev room for a little bit and wandered around. And when I came back a little bit later, there was some drama of sorts. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but the power went out just in the room. And there was a plan hatched to use an extension cord to power at least the video equipment in the room so that the remaining talks could be recorded and the live streams could be active. But just standing there watching them have that unsecured extension cord across this walkway where like there's dozens of people going back and forth. I had so much anxiety that someone was going to trip and bust their face, because that would totally be something I would do, that I was just about to burst. They did eventually get the extension cord taped down, like someone had to go find gaff tape. But by then, someone from university facilities showed up to reset the breaker on the panel that was outside the room, and the crisis was averted. The rest of the afternoon had some interesting talks, including one about getting into the Game Boy homebrew scene, and a talk about a C compiler that targets 8-bit CPUs, including but not limited to the one in the Game Boy. For me, the winning talk in that dev room was Raiders of the Lost Hard Drive. If you are a fan of the kind of repairs that I usually do on this channel, or that a bunch of other YouTube channels do, of fixing old computers and doing archaeology and getting these things working, go find this talk. I'll put a link to it in the description. Go find this talk and watch this talk. It's fabulous. A few years ago, the speaker bought a rare Commodore C900 Unix machine. The machine was working-ish, but the keyboard and the hard drive subsystem were just total disaster. So in the talk, he goes through this, what I kind of inferred was at least like a year-long process of getting this machine fully working. He had done this some years ago. It was a really fascinating talk, because he had to go to great lengths, including reverse engineering the BIOS on the machine and figuring out how to write floppy disks for it, and just a whole bunch of work. And it was really, really well presented. It was a great talk. I cannot recommend it enough. And then I left the conference. On the way back to the hotel, I came across this really cool art display of the Nautilus from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I don't recall seeing it on Saturday, but I often come around through this part of town to catch the tram over here to take to the conference. I didn't do that this time, so I may have just missed it on Saturday. And on Monday, when I came back by, it was gone. Like, there was nothing left. So I'm really glad that I got to see it during that brief interval while it was there. I think next year I will return to FOSDEM as Ian from Tales of Weird Stuff. I have a few ideas for talks that I could try to give in the Retrocomputing dev room, assuming that they have one. So I would be very, very interested in doing that. I think that there's some cool stuff that I could present about both projects that I've already done, possibly, and ones that I'm intending to do between now and then. It was a very different experience, like not just because of the sleep deprivation, but it was a very different experience this year for a variety of reasons, and I for sure want to go back. I do have another video that I'm working on that is part of this trip. While I was in Amsterdam and Brussels, I went retro video game shopping, and so I recorded a bunch of stuff about that. So I'm gonna do a video about retro video game shopping in Amsterdam and Brussels. I'm hoping that is going to be out in 2 weeks. In the week in between, I am intending to get back to the 286s that I had been working on, the ones that I had been working on before the trip, because I really want to get those wrapped up. If you are interested in seeing those videos, I highly recommend that you click the subscribe button. If you liked or severely did not like this format of video, let me know in the comments. I have very thick skin. If you think it was terrible, I can take it. I can take it. If you liked it, I'd like to know that too. Click the like button or click the other button, depending on whichever camp you're in. And until next time, try to remember the good stuff.